All right, if you're looking to raise funding for your startup this year or next, I really want you to consider seed strapping. It's always been around, but this concept has really started taking off in response to the downturn in VC funding, venture capital funding, and where the economy is right now. And to anyone listening, and most of the people who listen to these videos are early stage founders or first time founders, I frankly think you shouldn't even be thinking about investment or funding at all for your first idea or so. You should really be bootstrapping and seeing if you could do it that way, because then your idea is striving for profitability and being an efficient business rather than taking someone's money and burning it in all these different places and failing, which can be a good thing, but not all the time when you're using someone else's money without really a goal of profitability. Most of the time it's growth. It's ridiculous growth, right? So seed strapping is essentially, if you're going to go for funding, whether it's a small sum, it could be 50,000, it could be 10,000, or it could be all the way up to $500,000. What are you going to do with that money? You're going to inject it in your business in a way where the next step isn't to go for all these fancy bullshit terms of funding like Series A, Series B, C, blah, blah, blah. But it's like, this is the sum of money I need to get my business off the ground. And then the next step is to become profitable, right? So that's seed strapping. It's one round of funding for a small piece of your company and then no aspiration to raise any more funding. And I think that is amazing, right? And it's very possible now in the year 2025 and beyond, because especially with the rise of artificial intelligence tools and technology and how we live in a very connected world, and there's ways to raise funding even through community platforms. So you start your product with a community, and frankly, community, we can get to it, is something that's really tough. It's more than just a mailing list, right, that you send stuff out to. It's more than that. You can actually make it work, right? The most expensive thing that a lot of that money goes to is hiring people, even if you're a tech company. And with where AI tools are today, I'm not saying it replaces people, but it can help you operate in an extremely lean manner, right? So seed strapping, please consider it, because there's a plethora of advantages there if you look at it that way beyond VC funding. And I think the main one, and not to shit on VC funding, if you're at the stage where you want to do it, great, because you've got this aspiration for world domination and you're a seasoned entrepreneur and this is your 10th startup, blah, 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 and you know what you're doing. Cool. Good luck getting that money right now. But when you go down that route, it's this ridiculous chase and marathon, not even marathon, like a series of sprints. So you just totally burn out for these ridiculous targets set by the investors that you work with, because they just want to see hockey stick growth constantly. And that's very counterintuitive, because sometimes when you launch a business, you haven't really figured out exactly what the perfect product market fit is for your customer base, right? You gotta listen to your customers, you gotta change. And if you're not even targeting profitability and you're just targeting, I need to 100x my customers, and customers most of the time in that case is an email or a user on this stupid spreadsheet or mailing list, and that's how you measure your success. It's bullshit. And then you find if you miss those targets, guess what? The valuation that you pegged your second or third VC funding round to takes a dive, right? Because you haven't hit that bullshit target. So suddenly you're in trouble. And there's been a number of scenarios pretty recently where a company has exited, like the founders have exited and sold it for a pretty, sensationalized number where everyone thinks they've left rich as fuck, but they've gotten nothing, $0 out of it, because too much of it has been diluted and spread out amongst more and more investors because they needed more money, because the way that they were growing and running the business was in a way where they were losing money. So in order to grow and keep the lights on, they just have to keep asking for money, right? Whereas if you follow the seed strapping route and you use that sum to build a model or build your product in a way where you don't need to keep asking for money, and you grow at your own rate because you don't have these shit targets and milestones in front of you, and you drive your own business because you've only given, less than 30% of it, say, away, so it's still your ship, then you grow at your own leisure, right? And yes, you still check in with your initial seed investors and your community, more importantly. I'm a big fan of not just waiting every year to give an annual report. Do a monthly video or something like that. Just talk to your customers and your investors. You'd be surprised whether they, how many people watch it and give you feedback, because then it's not just this bullshit echo chamber and mailing list that you call a community. You really get people behind you and backing you. So I actually think, and there's a bit of education required around this, but community funding platforms, and there's some really cool stuff that I'm privy to coming out where they're kind of like leveraging that, but in a very different, cool way, is probably a smart thing to consider if you're starting your first business or your second. Because then immediately, let's say you're trying to raise a small sum of money, and instead of going to one investor, you get a couple of hundred people chucking in a few $100 or $1,000, right? Suddenly you've got this community behind you that believes clearly in your product and you, that you can speak to. You can ask questions, you can get feedback, you can riff off, you can evolve your product offering around them to a degree while you kind of grow your business. But anyway, I'm going off on a tangent. I actually think, seed strapping is really the future, mainly because I see this ridiculous, in a positive way, rise of entrepreneurs trying to give it a shot. And they've got these great ideas because there's lots of problems to solve out there in the market, especially when you think about artificial intelligence and technology, and how also artificial intelligence, acts as almost a vehicle for a lot of ideas that didn't exist a few years ago. That there's this huge era of solopreneurs emerging. And I've done a whole video around solopreneurs that, if you're interested, I'll put at the end of this video. Please check it out. I think, there's going to be a lot of solo founders that hit $1 million, $2 million ARR or ridiculous valuations themselves, whether it's bootstrapped or through seed strapping, right? Because they're leveraging all these different tools and ways to speak to their customers, and they're leveraging their personal brand as well. I think branding is big. Because even when you look at a lot of these large companies and how their CEOs communicate now, 5-6 years ago, even 2-3 years ago, that you wouldn't even know their face unless you opened up an AGM report, an annual report, right? Or you did your due diligence. Now, some of the big institutions like Blackstone, BlackRock, whatever, some of the most wealthy companies in the world, they're putting those persons and their senior staff on the forefront, almost doing like TikTok style videos to talk to their customers. This is what's going on in the market. This is what's going on with what we're trying to do. So it's not just some crazy thought that from a grassroots perspective, a lot of us are experimenting with, talking to our community and our customers. The big dogs are doing it too. So there's clearly something there. So yeah, and there's a bunch of examples of companies out there that you can Google who have seed strapped, like Zapier, really great example. I might actually put a link in this video to a CNBC article that was published only about a week ago, talking about this, how seed strapping is the new form of funding, because VC funding's in the shitter, because where the world's at right now. And I implore you to go read it. And if you're out there giving it a shot, this is your time. It's never been, I'm not going to say easier, but more accessible to start a business. And if you fuck it up, who gives a shit? If you fail, who gives a shit? Especially if it's your first or second. As long as you're not burning someone else's money and just walking away going, oh, I learned something from it, but I wasted all your money. But you've done it on your own, you've bootstrapped or you've seed strapped and you've managed expectations, but they believe in you and you give it a good shot. I doubt you'll fail if you seed strap, if you raise that money, if you find enough people to believe in, because you've got less likelihood of failing because you're not trying to grow at a rate of knots, right? You're striving for profitability and margin. Even if you make dick all margin, but you make enough money to cover your costs, you can keep operating. And then it's about your grit and your drive and how long you want to do it for. And when's that kind of pivotal moment, that serendipitous point where you just have that aha moment and you figure it out and you nail it, and then suddenly, you start growing, but you've put in the hard yards before that. So yeah, I'm just going to stop there. Good luck. You got this. And drop in the comments if you've got a startup idea and you're looking for funding, because there's some stuff that I'm involved in now that I could probably connect you with from a seed strapping perspective or a crowdfunding perspective that you might find really interesting. But I'll speak to you again soon.